Every parent wants to raise a happy child, but in the United States, anxiety in children has reached record highs. Childhood depression diagnoses have doubled in a single decade. By the time most kids start kindergarten, they have already cycled through structured enrichment classes, academic prep programs, and carefully scheduled playdates with defined learning outcomes. And yet, Denmark has ranked among the happiest countries on Earth for over 40 consecutive years. Not 40 years of trying, 40 years of simply being. And researchers who have studied this carefully have found the same answer again and again. It begins not in the school, not in the policy, but in the everyday choices Danish parents make before their children can even speak. In this video, we are going to look at 3 specific Danish concepts that explain why: Hygge, Friluftsliv, and Ærlighed. Each one is backed by research, each one is practical, and each one will change the way you see your child's behavior. Stay for concept 3. It is the most counterintuitive idea in Danish parenting, and the research behind it may be the most important thing you hear today. Laura was 31 years old when she moved from Minneapolis to Copenhagen for a 1-year teaching exchange. She had 6 years of classroom experience in American elementary schools, structured, curriculum-driven, outcomes-focused. She knew exactly what a well-prepared child was supposed to look like. What she found in Danish classrooms stopped her completely. 4-year-olds were outside in the rain with no adult directing their activity. A group of 6-year-olds were using real, bladed tools to carve wood. A teacher was reading a story about death to a room full of 5-year-olds, and the children were not shielded from the ending. And yet, these were the calmest, most grounded children Laura had ever encountered. Not obedient, not suppressed. Simply settled in a way she could not immediately explain. She spent a year trying to understand it. What she found was not a parenting method. It was a philosophy, carried through 3 Danish words that most Western parents have never heard. The first is hygge. In English, hygge is usually translated as coziness. Candles, warm socks, a cup of tea. But this translation misses what Danish parents actually mean by it. Hygge is not comfort for its own sake. It is about what developmental psychologists call felt safety, the deep, recurring experience a child has of being unconditionally included, of belonging, not because of what they have achieved, but simply because of who they are. John Bowlby, the British psychologist whose decades of research transformed how we understand child development, described something he called the secure base. His core finding was this: children who experience consistent emotional safety do not become clingy or dependent. They become more curious, more willing to take risks, more capable of recovering from failure. Because they carry the knowledge at a neurological level that the safe place will still be there when they return. In Danish homes, hygge is the daily practice of building that base, intentionally and without condition. It is the Friday evening ritual of sitting together with no agenda, the shared meal where every child's voice carries equal weight, the bedtime that prioritizes physical closeness over getting to the next task. These are not indulgences. They are the architecture of inner stability. What Laura observed in Danish classrooms reflected this directly. The children were not calm because they had been disciplined into calmness. They were calm because they felt, at a foundational level, that they were held. And a child who knows they are held is not afraid to move away from the center, because they are certain the center will be there when they come back. Calm behavior in children is almost never purely a discipline problem. More often, it is a safety problem. Hygge is where that safety is built. The second concept is Friluftsliv. Translated literally, Friluftsliv means open-air life. In practice, it describes something Danish parents treat almost as a non-negotiable: the right of a child to move freely through the natural world, without agenda, without a scheduled outcome, and without adult rescue. Every day at Laura's Copenhagen school, rain, cold, wind, or mud, the children went outside. Not for organized sport, not for structured activity, simply outside, with space to move, climb, fall, and explore on their own terms. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology found that children who spent regular, unstructured time in natural environments showed a 21% reduction in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, compared to children in structured indoor or outdoor programs. The critical variable was not the natural setting itself, it was the absence of adult-directed structure. But the Danish understanding of Friluftsliv connects to something deeper than cortisol. It connects to a framework Danish educators have used for generations to talk about what children actually need to develop: the image of a tree. The visible part of the tree, the branches and the leaves, represents self-confidence, the things that can be seen and measured. Grades, performance, social standing, real things that matter. But the roots, invisible below the surface, represent self-esteem. Not what a child can do, who a child believes they are, regardless of any outcome. What Danish research has found consistently is this: when we overstructure children's time, we train the leaves. When we give children unstructured freedom to navigate real physical challenge, to fall, to fail, to get back up without being rescued, we feed the roots. This is why Danish children as young as 2 are trusted with small knives for woodworking. Not because Danish parents are reckless, because they understand that a child who has been trusted to manage real, physical risk will not be paralyzed by social or emotional risk later. The muscle is the same, and it only grows through use. Free play is not wasted time. It is the work that builds the parts of a person that no report card will ever capture. The third concept is Ærlighed, and this is the one that surprises Western parents most. Ærlighed means honesty, but not the kind of honesty most of us practice with children, editing difficult truths, softening endings, steering conversations away from anything too heavy. Ærlighed is the Danish commitment to telling children the truth about life, gently and consistently, because a child who has been prepared for reality will not be destroyed by it. This is particularly striking because Denmark is the country that gave the world its most beloved fairy tales. Hans Christian Andersen was Danish, and in his original stories, the ones Danish parents still read to their children, the endings are not always happy. In the real version of The Little Mermaid, she does not get the prince. She dissolves into sea foam. She dies of sadness and longing. Danish parents read both versions, the sanitized and the true, and they have not found this to be harmful. They have found it to be the beginning of a real conversation. Research in emotional development supports this directly. Children who are exposed to honest, age-appropriate discussions of difficult topics, loss, failure, fear, change, develop significantly stronger emotional regulation than children who are shielded from those subjects. The reason is neurological. When a child encounters difficulty in a context of safety and explanation, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and self-regulation, builds the pathways to process it. When difficult emotions are consistently avoided in childhood, those same pathways go underdeveloped. In Danish homes, death is discussed when it happens. Grief is named and not rushed. When parents argue, the argument is not hidden and then explained away as nothing. Children are not protected from the texture of real life. They are prepared for it. The Danish belief is precise. The more honestly we prepare children for reality, the less they will collapse when reality arrives. Laura tested this herself during her year in Copenhagen. When her host family's dog died, their 6-year-old daughter was told directly, plainly, and with warmth. There were tears. There were questions without easy answers. And 3 days later, the girl came home from school and told her friends, with a composure that surprised everyone around her, that her dog had died. She had been given the words, and the words had given her the ground to stand on. Hygge, Friluftsliv, Ærlighed. 3 concepts that do not translate cleanly into English, because what they represent does not quite exist in Western parenting culture as a named, practiced discipline. But the principles underneath them are not foreign. they are simply underused. Build consistent belonging before you try to build behavior. Give your child unstructured time to navigate real physical challenge, starting with small and manageable risks. And tell your child the truth about hard things, gently, age-appropriately, and more than once, so that when hard things come, your child already has a language for them. Denmark has not raised generations of grounded, happy children by demanding more from them. It has raised them by trusting them more. Laura returned to Minneapolis at the end of her exchange year. She still teaches elementary school. She describes her classroom as quieter now, not because her management style changed, but because her relationship to what children need has changed. She sees them differently, and that, she says, made all the difference. If you want to go deeper on the science, the next video in this series looks at why Finnish children consistently rank at the top of global education assessments, despite starting formal school 2 years later than their American peers. The answer is not what most people expect. Before you go, of these 3 concepts, which one feels hardest to actually practice in your home right now? Hygge, Friluftsliv, or Ærlighed? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.